So tell the people, man, where you from, obviously, but let them know, where you from, how things were growing up.
Hey, well, I was born in Philadelphia. Uh, Lived there till I was about two. And then my family, I was, raised by a single mother and my grandparents. And, we moved to Atlantic City for a little bit. And as a child, I had severe asthma. I was a severe asthmatic. Every spring and every fall, I'd have to be in the hospital at least 2 weeks,
Mm.
you know, at a time. Complete bubble boy with the tent over the bed and oxygen and IVs and all that good stuff to help me breathe. And it was hard as a kid not being able to play the other kids' reindeer games. You know what I'm saying? And watch the other kids playing at recess, and you're sitting on the sidelines. And but eventually, I fell in love with pro wrestling through a friend of mine, a kid named Sean, who was like my next door neighbor. And one day I go, "Hey, Sean, you want to come over watch the Phillies game?" He's like, "I can't. I'm watching pro wrestling." I was like, "What's pro wrestling?" I'm 8 years old at the time, and I go over and I watch pro wrestling, fell in love with it, and I was like, "That's what I want to do." And my family was like, "Yeah, okay," because they knew my condition and stuff.
Right.
But the years go on. I follow it. I'm obsessed with wrestling, watching it every week, buying every magazine. Before there was a million channels on TV, you had to hunt and search for pro wrestling. So I was watching anything available, and I grew up, and then eventually my family got me to a good doctor who helped get my lungs back in order. I couldn't even play high school football. I wanted to play high school football, but I was allergic to grass, so I couldn't play on the field
Oh,
because it
wow.
triggered my asthma. So as I'm seeing this doctor and my lungs are getting better, I'm still pursuing the dream of professional wrestling. And it wasn't until the day after WrestleMania 10, I'm packing up my car and driving out to Ohio to train with Al Snow. My family was like, "I think he's serious."
Who
And
was on that WrestleMania 10?
that was with Brett and Owen.
Okay.
That was the opening.
Wow, they go back that far. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird how you can Google I can Google my life, according to pro wrestling events.
Yeah.
My first wrestling school tryout was the day after WrestleMania 8. And then the day I went off to travel and become a professional wrestler the day after WrestleMania 10.
Were you were you about 20 years old when you got into wrestling, or was that like straight out of high school, or?
Yeah, well, due to my asthma, I missed a lot of school, so I got held back,
Okay.
absenteeism. So when I graduated high school in '93, I was 19.
Okay. So I was like, are you sure? That seems to be a little off. That's what, the
Well,
Wikipedia is saying. Yeah. So,
yeah, I missed a lot of school because
okay.
out of the hospital, and but I graduated, and then I was, my whole life I've been planning for pro wrestling, just watching it, studying it, learning about the schools, learning about trainers, this, that, and the other thing. And then, once I started talking to a woman named Phyllis Lee, who initially I was going to go to the Malenko brothers school of wrestling. It was Dean and Joe Malenko.
Okay.
And I was going to move to Tampa. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I had sent a letter there inquiring about the school, and I started talking to a woman named Phyllis Lee, like pen pals. No text, no email, just straight up writing letters and back and forth. And we're talking about me going to Malenko's. So after high school, I started working, and every check I would put half in a sock drawer, half to my family.
There you go.
Stuff. And once I had enough for tuition, sent that off, paid my tuition, and then so I start putting half that sock drawer money towards living expenses. I'm going to have to eat, I'm going to have to pay rent, this, that, and the other thing. So I'm all ready to move to Tampa, and Phyllis is, telling me, it's like $600 a month for like a one room efficiency. I'm like, ooh, that's a little bit much. This is
Right.
1994.
Exactly.
So I was like, she's like, I understand your hesitation, but there's a school in Ohio run by Al Snow, and Al hadn't blown up like he had eventually would blow up. He was just a independent wrestler out of Ohio, and he was having these legendary matches with Sabu that was starting to make a name for himself. She said you could move to Ohio, you could live in the school, and it's only about $1.50 a month. I was like, okay, if you vouch for him and all that stuff. You know, Phyllis helped. Not only did she help me get in the business, she helped guys like X Pac and she helped Raven here and there. So I was like, all right. So when the advice of a woman I've never met, I've sent a couple $1,000s to, and then I'm going to drive to the school.
And this is in the 90s, so sending money just wasn't that convenient.
Yeah, and there's it's not like you're going to a college where there's like a track record. There's legendary stories of people showing up for their first day to train to become a professional wrestler, and the school's closed and
they're scammed out.
Yeah, the guy scanned. So, day after WrestleMania 10, I'm driving from. We lived in Atlantic City at the time. Driving from Atlantic City to Lima, Ohio, which is about 13 hours, but had car problems on the way, so I had to spend the night in Columbus, Ohio. Show up the next day, and I go up to the elevator and I go, "Hey, I'm here to train with Al Snow," and Al's there. He goes, "Hi, I'm Al. I'm leaving," because he had to get new padding for the ring. He was going to go get padding that day, and so I get there and I show up, and he has to leave. If I had thought, a thought in my head, I should have said, "Hey, can I make the drive with you? Get to better acquaint myself with you." But I stayed there and got to meet the other students, and very interesting group of characters. But and then Al showed up that night and did training, and we had our little meeting, and he broke down what he expected from me, and it was the best. Uh, it was the best gamble I took. It was a risk. It was the best risk I took in my life, just going to see Al Snow.
Yeah, I guess that answers my question because I was wondering. It was like, well, Al Snow, maybe I thought maybe he had already been made by then. So I was like, okay, do are you a trainer now as well?
I like to call myself a coach.
Okay.
I got students who are out there, but what I like to do is like when the guys are already at the stage where they're going to have a match, pull them aside and critique the match.
Yeah.
I I can't stand there and go, okay, this is an armbar. Okay, this is a headlock. Come to me when you're ready to have a match. I'll watch your match and tell you, well, you could have done this better. Here's your timing for that. This, that, and other thing. But you have a couple students out there now. I coached Matt Riddle. I coached Damian Priest. I coached Steve Macklin, who's an Impact. Ian Riccaboni, the ring announcer for Ring of Honor. He's one of my kids. Leon St. Giovanni, the Rocket, who wrestled in Ring of Honor. He's wrestling all over the world. He's doing great things. But I have a bunch of kids out there and a bunch of people I've given advice to over the years. I'm more of a mental coach than like a trainer.
Yeah.
Teach them about like what to expect. Getting into the business and being a life coach.
Like when you're training, are you already trying to figure out your finishing moves and stuff like that? Or are you more just focused on the fundamentals at this time?
Oh, it's all about the fundamentals.
Okay.
Technique and fundamentals beats any athleticism. I wasn't the most athletic guy, but I learned the fundamentals and how to work and take my time. I always tell people if you feel like you're going too slow, go slower. Because if you feel like you're going too slow, people, when you're young in the business, you feel like you're going too slow, so you feel like you need to speed it up.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong way to approach it. Once you get, and I hear about this like from people in other sports too. Like Chris Long I saw an interview with Chris Long, who played with the Rams and played with the Eagles. And he's like, dude, when I first got on the NFL field, I felt like I was on a highway with cars just zooming around me. But as time went on,
it slowed down.
It slowed down. You got your sense of timing, and that's try why I teach kids. Besides psychology and stuff like that, you get a good wrestler will make money, but a good worker will always make money. Just learning how to work and how to connect with a crowd and make it. That's the important thing is making the connection. You could do the, your stuff could look fantastic. You could be the best wrestler in the ring. You could probably work circles around me, but if you don't make that connection with the crowd where they can get behind you personally, it makes your career a little bit harder. It's not impossible to have a good career, but if once you get over and connect with the crowd to where they, the second your music hits, they're on their feet.
Yeah.
That's when you're doing it right.
And I also feel like kind of age sometimes comes with that. You realize we get wiser with age, and sometimes when you're young, the knowledge don't soak up like that.
It's a generational thing too.
Yeah.
It goes with everything. A parent could tell a kid to do something, and the kid be like, "They don't know me," and all this stuff. And then once they get to become their parents' age, they're like, "I wish I would have listened." And
Right.
it's the thing with wrestling. There's a lot of things. The funny thing is, I thought I knew how wrestling worked until I started training with Al, and I realized how much I didn't know. You know, and it's funny. You see all people online, and they talk about wrestling and what they think how it should be, and a lot of it couldn't be further from the truth on how the inner workings of how wrestling works and stuff like that. And without giving away magic tricks and stuff like that, there's just different ways to approach wrestling and approach being creative that it's hard to understand until later in life.
Yeah, and like you said, without giving away the magic tricks, do you think for the longest the wrestlers had to be like hush mode on how wrestling was and couldn't really give it away because they're obviously trying to sell a story and everything like that? Um, is that a thing? Do people like, hey, don't go out and talk about this or whatever the case may be?
Well, I think people say kayfabe's dead, which I don't agree with, because I mean we just had WrestleMania and 80,000 people came out knowing that the business will work, but
Right.
they want to see the finished product. They want to know who's going to win, who's going to lose. They want to escape. It's the ultimate escapism. They want to. They don't want to know what's going to happen. Even though
Yeah.
people go, but you can go back to the 40s and 50s, and you can go through like old newspaper clippings where people are talking about wrestling being fixed and scripted and stuff like that. It's always been kind of known but not really talked about. What you could do as a performer is just talk in a way where you're not insulting the customer's intelligence, but you're not giving away trade secrets either. It's like the worst thing I've ever seen is like somebody finding out you know they're wrestling tonight and they're losing, and they text their friends, "Don't bother coming, I ain't winning." I've seen that, and it's just like, why would you do that?
Wow. I mean, is it true? Do they have like gambling out? They're trying to do gambling
I
on
don't know.
wrestling. Is that even? I
I don't
just
even,
heard about that. I'm like, are you sure?
I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, you would literally have to keep everything so lock and key, even from
Oh
the
man.
performers. You know, all it takes is for one wrestler to place a bet on himself to win a
Yes.
before he goes to the ring, and I don't know how you would do that. So it's crazy. But I don't know how you. I'm not a gambler,
Yeah.
so
Right.
I'm the last person you want to talk about that.
I just heard about that, and I was like, that's interesting. I don't know how they would. Like you said, I don't know how they would do that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how that works, and but it'll be interesting to see how Like I said, I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
let's find out together.
So you're training with Snow.
Yes.
Does how does the ECW come into play as far as Snow and you? I mean, like who made the first move, or how did all that happen?
I was training with Al. I went there March of '94, I had my first match in June. And then like I was living at the school for like a full year. And it got to a point where Al said, "Hey, you've been here for a year." And Al was getting me bookings in the area. Like, Dan Severn who was one of Al's students, would run shows up in Michigan. Sabu was running shows. He would use those students. I would wrestle every Thursday night in Indianapolis, Indiana for Mike Samples. There'd be a random show in Kentucky. I was wrestling almost, besides the training every day, when I was training with him, he had morning sessions and night sessions. Morning would be at 9 a.m., night would be at 6 p.m. I lived in the school, so I would do 2-a-days, kind of like in football. So, and when Al had a show that weekend, we didn't train I went along to the show. I went along with him to the shows, and I learned more in the car, just talking to Al than some of the stuff he showed.
Wow.
And then like he would go out of his way in his match that night to do something he had taught me in the week. And we'd be driving back to, Ohio, and he'd be like, "See what I did?" I was like, "Yep." But he said, it's time to go off, learn, get your own bookings, learn how to hustle. And that's what I did. I moved back to Jersey at the time. And then we moved back to Philly not much longer after that. My grandfather passed away. My grandmama, living down the shore, and Jersey Shore was their retirement dream. She's like, "Let's move back to Philly. Let's be with the family." I was like, "All right." So me, my mom, grandma moved back to Philly, and that's where I start trying to get into ECW. But I'm also doing shows. I'm just driving to whatever shows in the area trying to get booked. And I would go to a Dennis Corluzzo show, introduce myself, and he'd be like, "Hey, you got your stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "So and so stuck in traffic. You're on second." All right. So I started doing shows in Jersey. I start doing shows in like Baltimore, in Philly, and it was like 3 shows. I did a show in Baltimore, West Virginia, and Pittsburgh, and Stevie Richards and Raven were on those shows, and I just made a connection with them, and we just kind of hit it off. And wasn't until like the Pittsburgh show where Raven said, "Hey, idea for Stevie. Stevie's my lackey in the ring. He's my flunky, my stooge. We want Stevie to have a lackey. We want a guy, big fat guy who dresses like Stevie." And he's like, you can move, you can do the moonsault, because he watched my match. Somebody do the moonsault. He's like, "You interested?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, you're gonna have to wear a half shirt, Daisy Dukes." I go, "But I'll be in ECW." He goes, "Yes." I go, "I'm in." You know. And then it wasn't until like another month later he came up with the idea for the Blue Meanie character, which is basically based off a character in a movie called the Yellow Submarine, the Blue Meanie. And he was like, "Hey, I got this idea for the Blue Meanie." I was like, "All right, I'll be in ECW." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right." He's like, "Well, you're gonna have to dye your hair blue." I was like, "I'll be in ECW, right?" And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, "I'm in." I mean, you don't have to sell me on this, you know. And the cool thing is, I used to go to ECW shows as a fan. If you watch a lot of those shows, you might catch me in the crowd. And it wasn't. I was going to shows 93, 94, moved away, trained, and then came back. And I moved back March in 95. In October, November, I started working for ECW, which is insane.
And then along with that comes the BWO,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
And I was actually seeing you have the best selling or the highest selling tees in the ECW history
Yeah, one
for
of them.
that. Obviously kind of like a parody of the NWO.
Yeah.
Which is a great like salesman from a salesman point of view. Like that was a smart move right there.
Hey, well, at the time, Stevie Nova and I had been doing a lot of parodies. Um, we had done Kiss. We did. I did Blue Dust. Stevie did. We did the Blue Meanie Bloods, which was like Bobby Eaton, a parody of Steve Regal and Bobby Eaton. So we were doing parodies at the time, kind of like Weird Al would do with music. Weird Al Yankovic would do a parody of the biggest song at the time, and it would be, blow up, and it was always done as a homage, as a tribute. And we kind of did the same thing. Everybody we did a parody of was out of respect. And
Yeah.
the coolest thing is, we did the NWO. I mean, we did the BWO, which is a parody of the NWO. Later on, I would meet the NWO guys, and they were so cool about it. They said, and even Scott Hall said to me, he's like, "Well, I used to tell Kev, you know, since it's the Blue World Order, and the blue guy's me, I should be the leader of the NWO." Joking around.
Yeah.
So it was always done in respect. I love those guys. You respect those guys, and if you're going to do a parody, you got to do a parody of the best.
And they never got to feature you on anything with that whole parody, right?
With what? With
With the BWO. Like as in like, NWO, and then maybe the BWO comes out of nowhere. I mean, that would have been super cool, just to have that type of,
there was a moment where Scott Hall came to ECW, and I was like, we should kind of do something.
Yeah.
Because me and Nova were still in. I went back to ECW 2000, and Nova was there. Scott Hall comes along. Why not just do it like a one night BWO with Scott Hall as a member of the BWO? But it wasn't meant to be. I mean, eventually there was a show in Wisconsin. My friend Julian Bradley did shows out in Wisconsin, and his partner Riley, and they had Kevin Nash versus Steve Richards, NWO versus BWO, and I got to manage him, and it was a lot of fun. But the NWO guys are super cool, they were super respectful that we were cool about being the parody. They had no problem with it at all.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, a lot of people love them, but some people had their jealousy of what the click, so that's cool that they were cool with that.
Look, the thing is, like, people who are supposedly have to have these reputations were always cool with me. And I don't know what maybe it's the way I approach people. I always try to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Yeah, exactly.
Approach people the way I want to be approached. I try not to be a goof. Try not to be a jerk. Just treat people with respect, and hopefully they respect you back. And when I went to WWE, I got along. I went to ECW, got along with everybody. Talk about a great learning tree. Sitting under, with being in a locker room with Paul Heyman, Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, Tommy Rich, Taz.
Yes.
So many great minds.
You had what the Dudley Boys.
Yeah.
Eddie Guerrero came out of.
He was before me.
Before you.
I got there like maybe 2 months after he had gone to WCW.
Okay. I think we got Rob Van Dam.
I was there with I was there. I was in the crowd the night Rey Mysterio debuted, and then 2 months later I'm sharing a locker room with him, which is kind of cool.
Some classic names.
Rhino. Great people too.
I think Bam Bam Bigelow too, right?
Bam Bam Bigelow was probably the biggest influence on my career. Just being a big man, I wanted to be the agile big man. I knew I was never going to win a Mr. Atlas US or a Mr. USA bodybuilding thing, but I knew I could do something in wrestling. And it wasn't until, I got to ECW. I was wrestling. I got to ECW. They bring in Bam Bam Bigelow, and Bigelow would pull me aside and give me advice, which is invaluable. I remember one night, I had a match at the ECW arena. I go back, I sit down in my chair and going over what happened in my mind. And Bigelow comes over and goes, "Hey man, I know, we're both big guys. And, when you go to the gym, you don't have to like work out hard and get all muscled up. But if you do anything, get on the bike and just make sure you have strong legs."
Okay.
He said, "There's nothing worse than being a big guy and you're halfway through a match and your legs feel like they're spaghetti, the next day I went to the gym and I hit the bike and I was riding the bike 45 minutes a day. He goes, Bam Bigelow gave me that advice, and there was a point where in ECW, he pulled me aside. He's like, hey, he goes, how much you making? I told him, he's like, I'm sure you can make this. Go talk to Paul. Ask him for this. I went and did it and got, Paul did it. So,
Yeah.
and like, he would watch the matches, give advice, and, be a mentor of sorts, Bigelow. I mean, and he's one of the reasons why I started doing the moonsault, I'd seen bigger guys do the moonsault, but when I saw Bigelow do, I was like, oh man, I gotta do that, as a kid, and bring him to start practicing in the pool. Muda, it kind of turned me onto the moonsault, but once I wanted to do it when I saw Muda, but when I saw Bigelow do it, I was like, now I gotta do it.
Yeah, that's when I see you do that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's insane, but and that's what got me noticed for ECW.
Okay.
So forever grateful.
Yeah, and in those times, I mean, like the big dudes, I mean, you think about like Yokozuna and stuff, like you had to have those strong legs, I mean, the fact that he could just reach up that high and kick, you're like, damn, how's a big dude do that,
He's a sweetheart too, man. He looked like a monster, and he could disassemble any human being if he wanted to, but he was always very kind, very laid back, very respectful. I mean, he has no choice but to be cool because he comes from the Samoan fan. All the Samoans are awesome people, and I'm glad they like me because there's three things there are certain in life. You're going to die. You got to pay taxes, and never piss off a Samoan. So if you live by those three guidelines, you'll be all right.
Damn near running the wrestling world in a sense. The family's so big. Real quickly, were you in the ECW when the mass transit thing happened?
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, just obviously some young cat he must have been 17. Kind of.
A fellow lied about his age. He lied about his credentials. Showed up to an ECW show. He said he was trained by Killer Kowalski, which ironically, this was in Massachusetts, and usually Killer Kowalski came to these shows. And the one weekend Kowalski doesn't show up, this kid shows up saying he was trained by him. So there was no way to fact check it.
Just the timing of that is crazy.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, but I mean, if I jump into a lion's den or a bear cage, I can't get mad when I go, oh, why is he attacking me? There's certain ways, and I'm not justifying what happened, but I understand why it did. There's certain ways to, approach. Look, I shared a locker room with New Jack, and I'm this big fat goofy kid, with this silly gimmick, and he always treated me with respect.
Yeah,
I treated him with respect. The way I approached him, and saying hello, goodbye, this, that, and when he's pinning me, thank him. That's an old tradition, that I don't know if it still exists, but you thank people for working with you in the ring. And so this kid shows up and he's lying about everything, and he's a last minute replacement for Axel Rotten, who couldn't make the show, and he just approached everybody in that match the wrong way. Just, hey, let's do this. And then he came to the show with some little people, some minis, and he tried to get them incorporated in the match. And it's just like, man, all you had to do was sit there and say, New Jack, what would you like to do? And he would have been fine, but you go in and tell a guy who's there every week what you want to do. And it's just, and he did it to the wrong guy, and I'm not justifying it, but he was right, but I understand.
When he talks about it, he's like, yeah, I did what I did. I'm like, okay, there's no remorse. Like, so.
Yeah, that's Jack.
Yeah.
I love the guy. I'm not saying it was 100. I would have handled it differently. But
it is hardcore, man.
I don't have 5 justifiable homicides either. So,
I think you said your first kind of big wrestler you got to wrestle with? Was that Cactus Jack?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd been training with Al, and I started making trips over to Pittsburgh with Dan Severn. He started working for this guy named Norm Connors, who ran Steel City Wrestling, and he was booking another one of our students, Ray the Crippler Roberts, who got into business like way late. Like he was like maybe mid 30s, 40s, and but for whatever reason he got over. He we couldn't explain it, but he was over. And I had a tag partner at the time, Rick Majors, who's another Al student, and we started this little angle with Ray Roberts, beat him up, and then Ray was like, "I'm going to bring in Cactus Jack," and we had it was in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, Ray Roberts' hometown, right north of Pittsburgh, like half hour north of Pittsburgh, for Norm Connors, and yeah, but again, Googling my life according to wrestling, it was the day before SummerSlam '94, maybe, and had a wild street fight with him. And this was like a week after Cactus had done the death match tournament where he burned all the skin off his arm, and so his arm's all wrapped up. And we might have been his first match after that death match tournament, which was insane to think about when you think of wrestling history. But Cactus is another great guy, another huge influence on my career, helped me a lot. And when I got to go to ECW, he was kind enough to incorporate me and Steven into some of his matches, kind of being his sidekicks. His last weekend in the business, he had me and Stevie in his corner against Chris Jericho in Queens.
No.
And then the next night, his farewell night against Mikey, he did this speech where he's teasing that he's going to call out Todd Gordon and Paul Heyman, like, these two are visionaries. Without them, ECW might not even exist.
You did that perfectly.
The blue meanie. And then we come out and we do the Can to New York. And it was magical, and Mick's always been excuse me, allergies are killing me. Mick Foley's always been a huge advocate in my career.
So, let's see, because that's just, I've talked to some people where they've been able to have that jump where just, some people have the slow grind and some people just jump straight into the big names or with the big names, and they're blessed to be around those type of people. So I mean, that's like very dope and a nice guy, but super hardcore.
Dude, I was only in the business a year and a half when I got to ECW. I was green as grass. I made plenty of mistakes, but yet Paul Heyman didn't give up on me, and the people around me didn't give up on me. Just rookie mistakes, and I think Paul understood. It's one thing to make a mistake; it's another thing to repeat the mistake. So if I was corrected, I was coachable, as they say. Hey, don't do this. Oh, I never did that again. Whatever it was at the time, but that's why I try to teach younger kids, just be coachable. You might not understand that at the time, but when you get to be my age, you're like, I'm so glad they taught me that. Whatever that, and pro wrestling is very situational. You don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And that's life. But that's why I feel bad for the kids breaking in today. They don't have that on the job training where everything's televised, everything's streamed. And if you make a mistake, you're on, Botchamania, where, when I first started, I was doing these shows that, nobody's filming, but I can try something. If it worked, I did it again. If it didn't work, nobody saw it. And I can go on and I go, well, that didn't work. I ain't going to do that again. But nowadays, kids do a thing, and if it doesn't work out, it's there to live on forever, and you can't live down that moment, which is I feel bad for the kids breaking in today,
Yeah. And then like as far as the appearance, so you have like the intro music and stuff like that. When does all that kind of get introduced? When is that established as a wrestler?
It's just a matter of just finding your own voice. you get in the wrestling business and you had this vision of who you think you're going to be, and it turns out to be something totally opposite. I had boots and trunks and knee pads and all that stuff, and I thought I was going to be this serious wrestler, and here I am, in 2023, talking about all the parodies I did, all the the comedy I did. As far as music and stuff, it's just like, it's just like anything, like game day. What's a good song to hype you up to? But when it came to my music in ECW, we had been coming out to Raven's theme, and then Raven was like, "Hey, so people don't think it's me coming out every time. How about you guys find your own deal?" So like me and Stevie would come out, and Nova would like pick like something untraditional. Like one show we would come out to the Ghostbusters theme, or one show would come out the girls just want to have fun, just for a goof. The crowd will react, and I guess one of my favorites, we came out to Hanson's Bop, which was
Oh
great.
wow.
Just and it worked. The crowd could have crapped on it. They could have said, what's this?
Are you doing dances during this time?
Oh yeah. The dance was like a mistake that worked. Because in wrestling, you gotta learn always say yes, even if you don't want to do it, do it. And one time I was supposed to have a confrontation with Bubba Ray Dudley, and Paulie Man looks at me and goes, "Can you dance?" I went, "Yeah." In my head, I'm going, "No." It's you got it. You got it,
Yeah.
right? So we had this dance off, and I'm doing this thing that looks like I'm having convulsions, but and then eventually it became the thing where Meanie's got to dance. So the dance eventually turned into the Meanie dance, which was just me trying to do the raise the roof, which I just started getting sloppy with it, and just became my dance. And you know, all these years later, people walk out, see me in the street, and they start doing the Meanie dance, or they're talking about they're playing WrestleMania 2000 and doing the Meanie dance in the game and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's music is a huge part of wrestling. It sets the tone, it sets the mood. As soon as you hear the glass break, Steve Austin's coming out to kick some ass. So
That Attitude Era.
yeah,
Yeah.
eventually my ring theme became "Let Me Clear My Throat" by DJ Cool, which uh, was cool enough. It was recorded in Philadelphia, live in Philly, and that became my staple, along with the BWO theme, and which was like a friend of mine sent me a tape of his band rehearsing, and I heard the BWO theme. It wasn't called the BWO theme, but I was like, that's a wrestling song. So when we started doing the BWO, um, we did the BWO, and NWO had that wow, wow, wow. I was like, I got a song for you, Paul. Here's the tape. Just play this, and that became our theme.
Oh, so you got to choose it, huh?
Yeah, I got to choose it, and
Dope.
it worked. And eventually, the early version of BWO theme was just the band jamming in a practice space into a boombox, which is as underground as you can get. And eventually, they went into the studio and did it like a studio version as well. So it worked out.
And did you take that into the WWE as well?
Yes. When the ECW invaded Raw, um, and when the BWO came, they did the BWO theme, and then when I went back to WWE in 2005 with the BWO, they had the updated version of the theme by then. So yeah.
So I know like the Big Show said like his song was chosen and he didn't like it originally, and I'm just like,
Well, when I was in WWE as a solo competitor, they had a song which I don't even know what it's called. I want to say it's "Oh Yeah" or something like that. That was a pretty good song. That kind of fit my character, and but everybody talks about the BWO theme, so which is kind of cool. I still use it to this day.
you have the match, I think it was like 1999 with Too Sexy. You guys are kind of doing a dance off. I think that was classic.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have be a baby face and do a dance off with Brian Christopher when he can dance way better than you.
And rest in peace,
Yeah, yeah. That Brian was a great guy. shame what happened. But I was very fortunate to get to share a ring with him and talk about the Ultimate Performer.
Yeah, I know like Rikishi doesn't really like to talk about it if you ask him and stuff like that. It just hits very close with him.
Yes, it's understandable.
Yeah. Did you have a Intercontinental Championship match with the Godfather?
I challenged for the Intercontinental title twice.
Okay.
Once with the Godfather, and then once against Jeff Jarrett, which actually turned out to be one of my favorite matches in WWE because Jeff's awesome. Jeff Jarrett's awesome. He was super respectful, and we got to have a really good match. And I'm every now and then I'll watch back and be and it brings back good memories. Because Jeff's just a great guy.
Yeah.
Jeff, he's what, third generation. His grandmother was in the business, his father was in the business, he's in the business. So to get it, and same with Brian Christopher, get to go in there, son of Jerry Lawler, and have a great match. You can't ask for much more than that. It's good times.
And I know it's been a while. I don't want to like bring up old news because I know you two are good now, but the whole JBL incident obviously was a big deal on the plane. He seemed to be kind of a bully, is what they say in the industry.
Yeah.
And so I guess he called you out because you were sitting in front of the plane as most wrestlers.
The plane incident. I don't know who said, why is the Blue Meanie in first class? But like, it just seemed like he didn't like, or maybe it was a thing of testing me to see how I react, and the fact that I didn't fight back might have been like, okay, it's okay to fuck with him now, because
Right.
my whole time is I'm the new guy here. I swing. Who are they going to fire? They ain't going to fire him. They're going to fire me.
Yeah. And you're just trying to be respectful. You ain't really knowing the situation.
Apparently, I know I wasn't the only guy. But time goes on, and we had our issue at One Night Stand, and we went into a room like two men, and I said, "Hey, this is my issue," and I listed off everything that happened, and then we talked, and at the end of the day, like mature adults, people change,
Right.
and that attitude era was a high pressure situation. People could be on edge, but I could work it out and forgive and move on, or I could be a crabby old guy holding on to a grudge. Nobody wants to hear that guy. So and so screwed me over. This, dude, it happened. Move on.
Yeah.
When you hold a grudge against somebody, it doesn't do anything to the person you have a grudge with. It does more to you than the person you're holding a grudge with. He apologized, and since then he's done a lot of things to try to make amends. He almost got me in the Royal Rumble that was here in Philly. It was down between me. They're going to either pick me or Bubba Ray Dudley. They picked Bubba Ray Dudley, which was awesome. Fine.
Yeah.
I love Bubba. But again, JBL has tried to do more for my life and career than most people want to. People like to harp on, oh, these guys had a fight. Yeah, and we've been friends almost 17 years now. Yeah, we made up, we moved on. But no, some people like, it's funny, people like to use as bully material themselves. Oh, remember when you got your ass kicked by JBL? I was like, oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah.
People like to use it as ammunition, thinking that it's going to hurt my feelings.
Well, Joey Styles did his thing, so he got paid back for everyone that's been bullied.
Yeah, unfortunately, these things happen, but Joey stood up for himself.
Yes,
which maybe I should have, and maybe who knows. But I can't. I can only look forward. I can't live my life looking in the rearview mirror, because the forward wind is way bigger.
I just want to quickly talk about some cool moments you had. Obviously the video games. I said you've been on 3 of them, correct?
Yes. WrestleMania 2000. I was on the very first SmackDown game.
Okay.
I am currently in Retromania Pro Wrestling, which you can get for any video game platform that is out there currently. So Very cool stuff.
And like you said, you had the classic dance on the video game, so you go there to story mode, and
Yeah.
And then you recently had the bone crushing action figures, right?
Which I have two of them right here. Uh, I can't tell you how awesome these figures are. I got a couple. I got cut two to keep in the cases and two to take out and display because these bone crushing figures they make the noise. They make the bone crushing noise, so to speak. Love them. You could get those at figure shop.figurecollections.com. They got the regular Meanie and the BWO variant, which I love. And I was at the State Convention in Indiana, and the people who sell the figures were there, and it was cool to see people buy the figures and come over and have me sign them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To do that in the year 2023 is super cool.
I'm glad you got that too. That's dope because everyone else has got theirs, and you're like, "Where's mine?" And then finally comes through. you know.
Better late than never, my friend.
Because I'll probably grab some. I like to give like the merchandise and memorabilia to my subscribers and stuff like that. So
Awesome.
all you gotta do is go subscribe, and you can win some memorabilia. So that would be cool right there.
That's very cool.
Just overall, man, how do you feel about your career? The wrestling career when you look back on it all.
Hey, I look back and I'm happy. I'm proud. I wasn't supposed to make it. Like I said, I grew up severe asthmatic. I wasn't supposed to. I don't know what I was supposed to do in life, but I knew in my heart I at least had to try professional wrestling, and it was the best. It was the biggest risk of my life and the best risk at the same time. Sometimes just know when the time is right to do certain things. I knew exactly the moment I had to quit my job and leave to go train. Just certain things you just feel.
Yeah.
And if you want to be successful at anything in any field, you have to be obsessed with it and learn it from every aspect. Make yourself unreplaceable, so to speak. But I look
Right.
back at my career and I have no regrets.
And be different sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could have easily been an idiot and said, no, I'm not wearing a half shirt and Daisy Dukes. I'm the serious. No, I went and did it and it worked. And
Yes.
here we are, 2023. I'm here on the podcast talking about
Yes.
how fortunate I've been. I have no complaints, no regrets.
Any I know you still kind of like you said coaching, wrestlers and whatnot, but any to the rest of the wrestlers that may not be able to be around you, any inspiring words from them?
Like I said, if you want to become a good professional wrestler on any level, you have to be. It's got to be your obsession. Uh, Whoever your favorite wrestler was, find out who their favorite wrestler was, and go back through the history and study. Become a mimic. My favorite band of all time was Van Halen, and when they started out, they were playing covers and playing other people's music, and then eventually they found their own voice and became this phenomenon. Eddie Van Halen, one of the greatest guitar players ever, next to Jimi Hendrix. So it goes the same with every, musicians, stand-up comedians, pro wrestlers. We're all the same. We share war stories. Any comedian getting a business, they try to do jokes that they grew up listening to, and then eventually they learn how to write their own. Same with pro wrestling. Study it, watch it from a fan's perspective, but then try to watch the subtle things, the timing, this, that, and the other thing. Once I started training, I started watching wrestling so totally different, and it's very cool that I can still watch wrestling as a fan, but I can watch it as a wrestler as well. But you're young and aspiring wrestler, always make it, be the first to show up, the last to leave, make yourself irreplaceable, do everything from setting up the chairs to setting up the ring to tearing everything down, and just be the guy that everybody wants to follow. Always be the guy people want to flock to. Don't be the guy people want to get away from. Like, I
Yeah.
got this guy. Ugh.
Yes.
Don't be that guy. Be the guy people want to be around. Eventually you'll get your crew and you'll grow through the business together.
Definitely, like you said, and if it's slow, take it slower, right?
Yeah, if you feel like going too slow, go slower.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anywhere the fans can, reach out to you on the social media links they want to show their love and respect.
If you would like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Blue Meanie, BWO. If you would like to support the Blue Meanie, go to PrestonTees.com/Blue Meanie. I also have my own podcast, Mind of the Meanie, which drops every Monday morning at 6 a.m. Listen to wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Definitely. And just want to say, get well, Sabu. I'm going through some stuff.
Yeah, he's paid his dues. He's still feeling the physical effects of things. So again, he was a huge part of my career, and I love him, and I wish him well.
Well, this is Grind 365. Obviously, you can catch us here, Grind 365, the podcast. I truly appreciate this one. First wrestler on the podcast. It was excellent. Thank you. And maybe we can have you back again sometime.
Sounds good, my friend.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Every day I put in work, I stay up on my grind.